A week out from session, 350 plus bills filed in the House and Senate involving your home, your insurance, your taxes, gun rights. And we take it all to two South Florida reps on the front lines from different sides of the aisle. State Representative Christine Hunschofsky is a Democrat from Parkland, repping a swath of Broward County. State Representative Vicki Lopez is a Republican repping Miami and surrounding cities. Great to have you both here. I know you've been in Tallahassee, you've been in meetings, you've chaired, committee meetings, so the work is underway right now. I do want to start with what is a headline this Sunday morning in state papers. I believe the writer would be Lawrence Mower at the Tampa Bay Times about insurance, Florida's insurance companies, a report that we have not seen from 2022 when the market was being reformed, mostly for insurance companies to make it more competitive. According to this report, Florida insurance companies were socking away billions of dollars to their companies, paying investors hundreds of millions of dollars, and all the while telling Florida insurance regulators, we're going to run out of money unless you do something. Vicki, what do you think about that?
So I'm really concerned about it. I think it's critical that the legislature do exactly what the speaker said in his opening remarks when we opened up the session, which is it's time for the insurance companies to understand that we're serious. There's going to have to be reform. If what we're reading in this report is true, we've been duped. And I think for the most part, certainly my constituents and those across the state will be very anxious to see how we respond to that. And so I'm hopeful that there will be a real thrust here on insurance reform.
And 2 years ago, reforms were put into place mostly to make a competitive market. The governor came a couple of weeks ago and said it's working slowly. Your leader, Danny Perez of Miami, said, look, we're going to let him work and we're not really going to have anything else going on this session while it does. Christine, do you think this will change things?
I wasn't surprised by the study because this is something that Democrats have actually brought up in all the discussions when we were talking about reforms over the last several years. What I do know is people across the state are really struggling with the rising cost of property insurance. I actually don't know anybody anywhere in my district who has a lower rate now than they did a year, 2, 3, or 4 years ago. And honestly, it's at such a crisis level and is so adding to the housing inaffordability that we already have in South Florida. I would argue this is something that maybe would have been a better topic for our special session.
So we'll see what comes out of that. A part and parcel, insurance, housing costs, and you two work a lot on those things. I really want to bring up, you've co-sponsored together changes.
I love her.
This is why we spread the love here.
Yes.
So changes, my Save Florida Home is a pot of money that people can dip into to harden their homes, hopefully bring down their insurance because their homes are hardened. The condo market now has a pot of that money, and you've introduced a bill to change that up a little bit for the condo market.
Yeah,
who wants to take that?
So we worked on it. What happened is we had a special session over a year ago in November, and I added this on as an amendment. And the amendment didn't go anywhere, but I think there was some interest in it. And then Representative Lopez reached out to me and she's like, do you want to work on this together? And I said, I would love to. So we worked.
Do you need a Republican to get Democrat things
across
the aisle?
I don't need one, but I like when we can show that on things that are important to our constituents that we're not in our own silos. Like we're working together. Vicki has a ton of condos in her district. I have condos 55 and older. And so our residents are suffering. Yeah. And I think I could have done it on my own, but it's more for me. I want the residents to know that when it's important to them, my constituents, I will work with anybody on any side of any aisle if it's going to bring solutions to their issues.
I asked that because we watched especially the immigration special session. Democrats get up and offer really viable ideas only to be shot down. That's why I asked that, because there's such a supermajority of Republicans who are kind of running the show. But so the pot
and they are. Yeah, we can count.
But I think it's an important concept to recognize that, at least for Christine and myself, we look for concepts or themes that we can work together on. We want people to see that even though my caucus has a supermajority, some Democrats have really great ideas, and we should, because we'd be discounting her constituency. So it's important to me to always work across the aisle, because quite frankly, look, we're doing something great with this bill, and who knows what other things we can do when we put our heads together.
Yeah, and just to add on, the bill is allowing the My Safe Florida Home program to be expanded to condominium associations, which I thought was important, and so did Vicki, because they are also homeowners, and it's also will make sure that they're adding investment to hardening their buildings.
Right. So $200 million for homes and $30 million for condos. Is that enough statewide?
So it was only supposed to be a pilot, right? We don't know if it'll work in buildings, right? And I think one of the things that we wanted to do in this particular legislation that we filed this year was to make it easier for condominiums to get the money. I think really the issue is, does it work? We want to see the pilot through to then determine, were we able to in fact harden a building, and was their insurance premium reduced? I think when we talk about the property insurance issue that we just talked about, it also affects condos. Condos have had an increase, sometimes 200% in property insurance.
Sure.
And with all the other costs that condos are facing, this is a critical piece of the conversation when you talk about the condo crisis.
And just to add on to that, I have a condominium association in my district. 55 and older people are on fixed incomes. Their insurance went from $500,000 to $800,000 to $1.2 million. I mean,
wow. And condos, I mean, you both do a lot of work on the, condos now after the Surfside, post-Surfside new regulations. The deadline just this year came, I mean, people living in condos, the costs are going up astronomically for them. And the condo market is really being affected.
It is, in fact. While homes are overvalued in our community, now condos are they're dropping up to 40%. The values are dropping up to 40%. So now you can't, if you want to get out, it's hard to get out because no one wants to buy the condo, right? Because you don't want to buy a condo where there's an assessment due that you will have to pay for it if you buy the unit.
So what, you have bills filed right now to address just that.
I do.
Exactly
I
that.
do.
Yeah.
So my condo bill was filed this weekend, and we're looking at ways. I mean, we're certainly not looking at bailing people out. I think single-family homeowners are upset hearing that.
I think that was the headline, and
it was.
Someone gave you, "We are not bailing out."
We're not, because single-family homeowners have had to replace roofs and exterior doors and windows, and no one's bailing them out. They've done the right thing. So the question is, how can we help moving forward? And I think we're looking at the first time to using a credit line in lieu of the long-term reserves, which I think will be very helpful. So I look forward to the discussion, because there's going to be many discussions on this condo bill that was just filed.
Are you endorsing that? Are you supporting that?
I have to read it first, but I do endorse, like, we've put now a timeline up, so people may not have done the maintenance and the repairs that they've needed to do over the last 2-3 decades. So now putting a timeline saying you have to pay all that now is going to be very impossible for a lot of people, especially the older ones. So I do like the idea of there being a credit line where they don't have to have all the cash on hand at that moment.
In the details. I love talking about all of this because it sends people who are really interested to the web. You can read the bill and really get people involved. Okay, we have a lot more to talk about. Gun bills. You filed a gun bill. Other gun bills filed, and a state Doge bill might be in the pipeline. So we will be back in a couple of minutes. Stay tuned. We are back with a great little Tallahassee roundtable. Rep. Christine Hunschofsky, Democrat from Parkland. Rep. Vicki Lopez, Republican from Miami. I want to talk about, Christine, you filed one of several gun-related bills about storage, safe storage for guns, but there's also a couple of other gun bills that roll back some of the advances, safety advances that were passed post-Parkland, where you were mayor at the time on this week. Wow, 7 years ago.
7 years ago.
So is there, talk about, is there a new sort of perspective? Is there an element of people forgetting, or did that not work well enough? I mean, opine on the rollbacks and the new gun safety laws coming down the pike.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I call the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Act the gold standard.
It was.
It dealt with mental health, it dealt with school hardening, and it also dealt with, for example, red flag laws to make sure those who wish to do harm to themselves or someone else cannot access a firearm.
Which by all accounts were really successful.
Really successful, and you now even have some of the most conservative sheriffs on board with the red flag laws, and they may not have been so convinced at the beginning. I think part of it is we've gotten further away from it, and the people who were impacted, who had been to the school, who had seen the aftermath, are no longer there. And I think people forget at what a bipartisan effort it was. This wasn't just, there were very right-wing Republicans and very left-wing Democrats who voted against the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Act. This was a compromise and also an understanding that school safety and community safety has many layers. It's not just one thing. And I'm very concerned if we start rolling back one aspect, because it kind of leads to a gaping hole in the overall process.
I know, watching the debate and even talking about it with people, Second Amendment rights are always like the headline, but it's not about gun control so much to anyone I ever talk to. It's about gun safety. And, Florida is a very diverse state, and gun safety in South Florida in a city may be very different than gun safety in Ocala. So, and your colleagues in the Republican side of the aisle are very much wanting to free up a lot of what they feel like are restrictions.
I think their argument is, and of course, I'm on record having voted against trying to lower the age. I, like Christine, feel like it's working, and I do love that the sheriffs have been very vocal and very participatory in the discussion. But I think, some of the arguments I heard on the floor obviously were, there's an 18-year-old mom, single mom, living, on a 5-acre plot. Does she not have the right to have a gun and also protect herself and her family? That's a very different picture than my district. I represent the urban area of Miami. We have more people than, in terms of density. My chief of police in Miami has said, no, don't lower it. I think law enforcement is concerned in certain areas of Florida. And it's difficult. One of the things that I have found is it's difficult to legislate for an entire state when the state is so incredibly different from region to region. And so for me, if it's working, why change it?
And so there was an open carry bill filed by a Panhandle rep who now is running for Congress, left the legislature, so that bill went away unless somebody else picks up the ball and files it again, which it sounds like it's possible.
Yeah, and I haven't really seen any widespread support for open carry in the legislature. In a state that is so reliant on tourism, I don't know how the open carry will mesh with that tourism.
I wanted to talk about Doge is a big, we watch federally Doge at work every day. There is a Florida bill now filed for a state Doge, but what's really interesting about that is you, Vicki, chaired a meeting where you found that I forget who reported it to you, because you are responsible for the budget for 12 different departments, 1,300+ employee line items that did not have an employee filling that job, yet the salary was going to beef up someone else's salary.
Correct.
So the money was being used, but not what it was for.
Correct.
Was that kind of gobsmacking to you?
I think it was. So I have an accounting and an auditing background, and for me, that was just eye-opening to see that there was no truth in budgeting. Taxpayers deserve to know what it cost exactly to run an agency. And and I don't want to say that they were playing games, but it looked that way, right? Obviously.
It was a shell game.
Well, it was. You're asking me for 10 positions, and yet you only need 5 because you're taking the other 5 salaries and beefing up and hiring people at the median range and not the minimum range. So I've instructed all the agencies in my jurisdiction to come back and tell me exactly how many people we need. Because you're right, when you look at the vacancies of those 12 agencies, they total $90 million that I'm appropriating that should be going to something else. And in my book, I think that that's just poor accounting, and it's also not very transparent in budgeting.
So are you up for a state Doge?
I'm definitely up for it.
Well,
Absolutely.
let me just add on to that. We have the Legislative Budget Commission, and a lot of these agencies, and I had served on that, would come in front of us and they said, well, we didn't use it for employees, but now we want to put it in our general revenue. And I'm like, well, wait a minute.
Correct.
What does that mean? And Doge, let's be clear. If you're in the business world and you're going in to turn around a company, you take time to analyze the departments, look at what they're working. You take a more surgical approach. You don't just, with one fell swoop, decide to get rid of thousands of employees without doing your due diligence. So,
well, some do.
Well,
some do.
Yes, but this is not getting rid of employees as much as it's getting rid of vacancies that have been open oftentimes 6 years.
Getting real.
Let's get real.
And
with
we
what
do
we need.
have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that every tax dollar we appropriate is being used in the way in which it was appropriated. And if all of a sudden there isn't as much of a need for staff, or they're having trouble staffing people, well, how are we solving that problem? Because in the end, taxpayers work really hard for their money, and it is our duty to make sure that it's being spent well and in their best interest.
And I'm going to tell you that I certainly hope that that bill moves, because I am hopeful the Speaker would then create this summer those kind of workshops where you drill down thoughtfully as well as with accountability. So,
and we're happy to sign up for those workshops.
thank you so much, Christine.
I am just going to end on this kumbaya moment. It is so great to have you here. I hope, session starts next week in a day,
does.
2 days. I would love, from Tallahassee or here, check in, keep in touch. I mean, we all love hearing the behind the scenes sausage, because ultimately that's when our viewers can weigh in on what's going on real time.
We'd love to return
Absolutely.
together.
Listen, the more people see what's going on and are educated in the process, that's better for all of us.
100%. That's why we're here.
Thank
Christine
you so
Hunschofsky,
much.
Vicki
Glenna.
Lopez, thank you so much.
No,
for
it's been
coming
a
in.
pleasure. Thank you.